Next on the program, Next on the program, I'm going to call the chairperson of the commission, Chairperson Advocate Ntabiseng Sipanya Mokhale, for the next panel discussion on gendered influence on power, decision-making, and institutional mechanisms. She will be joined by Advocate Mikateko Maluleke, Prof. Stembiso Lindelihle Mieni, and Honorable Boyce from the KZN legislature. Can we please have our panelists and moderator on the stage? One, two.
There they are called speaker. Point of order, speaker. I'm a commissioner, but. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I've got my time. I was panicking. Let me see. Okay. We're just 12 minutes out of time, so we are actually on time. As the program indicates, I will be moderating for the area of gendered influence on power, decision-making, and institutional mechanisms. People are going to be surprised when I say this, but today I want to be a woman of few words. I actually want to. Amen. Mama, too, have you got a problem with? Okay. I'm going to be a woman of few words now, because I think what we have noted now is we'd rather have presentations, more engagements, and questions from the audience and resolutions. If people don't mind, I would like to keep it that way. So without further ado, as you can see, I used to debate at school. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to give, do you have the program there so that I know where we start? Then we can have we start with you. Then we can have a full session in that particular order, where there are the comments, and then the round of comments, and then closing commentary, questions, and resolutions in that order. Thank you very much. According to my list, we will start off with Advocate Mikateko, and then go to Prof. Stembiso Mieni, and then Honorable Speaker Boyce. Okay. Advocate Mikateko is, as you know, is the DG for the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities. Strange enough, I usually say disability, but now I'm confessing. She's been in this sector forever. She has been at the Department of Justice forever. I'm not going to go into that. You will speak for yourself. Advocate Mikateko, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to the chairperson, and allow me to walk on the protocol that has been established before I arrived, all protocol observed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. When I came, Esther told me, no, you don't have to present. I was not allowed to present. They just asked us questions, and now there are no questions. Don't listen to people. But I'm going to be short. How long am I given? Because you know, you prepare for these things and you get there, they tell you 5 minutes. And I get so angry because you've prepared for the time that they have given you, 15 minutes. Okay. 15 minutes, okay. I won't read everything, but I would like to foreground my talk on this quote from a book by the Emeritus Justice Albisex. In a preface to a book, he says, there is so much, it's a long quote, but I think it's important. There is so much that the law can do, but there is only so much that the law can do. And further, the law could influence context, but also be overwhelmed by context. In that preface, he refers to 3 landmark cases that have the effect of completely transforming the possibilities of the law and the application of that law by the judiciary. My emphasis. Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. The second case is Mabo versus Queensland, and the third is Alex Co. Limited and another, the Rastafari community and others. He argues that Brown versus Board Education, by declaring racial segregation in public education to be unconstitutional, not only dealt a death blow to the doctrine of separate but equal, but transformed the way Americans looked at the question of race and the way the judiciary saw their role. He supposes that the thinking of the judges in Brown versus Board of Education was influenced by Marxist theory, in that the problem was not to interpret the world, but to change it. He refers to literature commenting on its successes and failures during the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, and notes that the common thread was the extent to which the same pernicious racism that had denied people full enjoyment of their rights in 1954 continued to this day to plague the school system and the wider society. The literature revealed that this resulted not simply from intransigence and rearguard action by white supremacist state and local authorities, but that it was the consequence of patterns of racialized thinking and practices endemic to the USA. He argues that events that followed Brown versus Board of Education show how devilish the detail could be. Hence, he says, the law could influence context, but also be overwhelmed by the context. In the last 30 years, South Africa developed a lot of legislation, and our legislation is recommended worldwide. It's praised. When you go somewhere, people will be telling you such a law and such a law, but we know that despite all those laws, I'm not even going to go to the Constitution because it's a world celebrated Constitution, but we know that many people in South Africa have not enjoyed those rights that are in the Constitution. There's somebody who said the Constitution has not been read to them. So even if in some areas, even if people were to know the Constitution, but the context under which they operate will make sure that they can't even claim those rights. So that is the challenge that we have in South Africa. I'm not going to read, I'm just going to pick up on certain things that I want to talk to. I think all of us know that as it is here in South Africa, we have a constitution, more especially Section 1, that says the Republic of South Africa is one sovereign, democratic state founded on the following values: human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights and freedoms, non-racialism and non-sexism. Non-racialism is enforced. If anybody says there's racism, everybody stands up in government and they're going to fight it. But if somebody says there's sexism, it's like people will look at you and say, you know, these women. So those are some of the challenges. And it happens even in the state. I'm going to give you examples of how the state treats the Department of Women, let alone women that are out there. If the Department of Women is disempowered by the state itself, how much more women that are out there? I will give you examples. I won't go into the status quo because all of us know what is happening now. We have a constitution, government developed lots of legislation, some have been implemented, and I'm not going to deny the fact that there has been progress. There are women who are billionaires, there are women who are millionaires, there are women who are holding positions that, who are the first, you know, the first AG, now the first Chief Justice, now we have all those first. Out of how many millions of women? Out of 32 million, and you have the first, and that is 30 years down the line. Even women as directors general, I think it's 27% female directors general. And women act, when there's a vacancy, women act. But when it goes to appointment, they appoint males. And even women themselves, women ministers, they appoint males. But one thing that made me to analyze and think about it is that, you know, patriarchy continues because women are the ones that are holding it. Who cuts in female genital mutilation? Who cuts the girls? It's women, it's not men. And for the benefit of who? For the benefit of men. So those are some of the challenges that you find women also not understanding. So the question that I always ask myself is, have we failed to empower women to be able to identify and see and be clear and be conscious on the fact that when we take such a decision, we are perpetuating what has been happening? Let me give you an example. We as a department wanted to host a conference on maritime because South Africa is said to have 3 seas. 3 seas, not 2. Most of the people know the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean, but we're also responsible for the Pacific. And we are told that the wealth that is on land, we have 3 times that wealth, whether it be mineral resources or whatever, at the sea. South Africans, who are the majority, black South Africans, don't enjoy it because they don't know. Most of the people that come from coastal land, they leave the coastal land and come to Gauteng or Cape Town. At least Cape Town has the sea, but they don't go to the sea. They go to find jobs there at Cape Town and Durban. But everyone is coming to those 3 areas because we have not empowered them to be able to understand the wealth that is around them. It's white people. In a way, in maritime, you do find Indian people, but not that much, or international companies, your big conglomerates. So as a department, we're saying we need to change that. You need to empower South Africans to be able to benefit. So we approached the department that is responsible for maritime. And they told us, no, we're not going to be Because when you talk about women, the involvement of women in, and they chose fishing. The involvement of women in fishing is only in washing the fish. So we are not even going to start talking about that. I was so angry, but I couldn't even respond because this person was a minister and I was with the minister. So as we were leaving, I told my minister, I wanted to respond. I wanted to tell her where to get off, but you can't. So those are some of the challenges. If you have a female minister who doesn't understand the statement that she has just uttered, then it's a lost case. And other people will say, but what is your department doing? Our department doesn't hire or whatever another minister. You can monitor and write reports, but it ends there. You submit to cabinet and it ends there. So I think the biggest challenge is that of educating women, the dialogues. I think that also is not just for government. I think all of us, whether it's in civil society or wherever, we need to start educating each other. Each one teach each other in terms of what is your role. Esther, I wanted to respond. I raised my hand and said to the facilitator, can I say something? Because someone asked Esther about the budgets. As a department, we can't mainstream gender in the budgets because we are not included. There's a structure that has been established. Before it was called MTech, now it has been changed. It's now TCB, Technical Committee on the Budget. They put departments that are the center of government. So they've put DPME, they've put Presidency, they've put DPSA, they've put COCTA, and National Treasury. It's National Treasury that determines. We are a center of government. We're not included. Some of the departments are those that are chairing the FOSAT. Just don't look at the time. It's still 7 minutes. What I have, I'm saying I have 7 minutes. I have 7. I'm saying, man, wait. So we are not included. So it was presented at one of the meetings. So I raised my hand and said, on what basis is the department not included? And we were told, no, because it's the departments that would be objective, not the department that would represent themselves. So we were saying, no, but we're not coming in there to represent ourselves. We're coming in there so that every government department that asks for money, they must mainstream women, youth, and persons with disabilities so that people can benefit, because the department is not an implementing department. It's more of a coordinating. So if we are expected to mainstream on our own, women won't be involved in mining, women won't be involved everywhere else. But I'm not painting a picture of being hopeless, but I'm trying to show some of the challenges that continue despite the constitution that is progressive and everybody saying we are not sexist, because the decision that led to that, it's a sexist decision within the constitution, within the era of the constitution. Also, I would like to respond to some of the things that have been raised about the budget on gender-based violence. The 1.6 billion, there is no 1.6 billion that was allocated to civil society organization. I've said it many times, and some other time I was on TV with Brenda Madumis. Brenda Madumis agreed with me that there is no 1.6 billion that was set aside for civil society or even for the Department of Women. The 1.6 billion that the president referred to was money that each department that was responsible had to reprioritize their funds. For example, let me make an example with police. The South African police, there was a problem with the rape kits. Every police station you went to, there was no rape kits, but all other things had a budget. So they had to rearrange their budget and reallocate the budget for procurement of rape kits and other things that they had to do. Justice had to reallocate the budget from within to address issues of courts and all those. Always, everywhere we go, you hear people saying there's a 1.6 billion. There was no 1.6 billion set aside for for civil society. But also as a department, now the National Council on Gender-Based Violence has been passed. There is no budget for the National Council to be implemented. For the past 3 years before the bill was finalized, National Treasury has been giving us, because we complained to the president that we can't implement what the NSP want because we're under-resourced. So they said they will establish a secretariat in order to implement the NSP. And it was only allocated 5 million, and the 5 million was for the personnel, I think it's 4 people, and for the programs that they implement. So for the council, we have no money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Advocate Maluleke.
Thank you so much, Surgeon Chair. I think I was also misled that it would just be a talk without necessarily having to come up with any presentation. But because I'm a teacher, I will try to bring to this discussion maybe 2 points. But maybe before I bring those 2 points, I'm happy, Chairperson, to say I'm a former CG employee who was a researcher in the CG office. And that office itself, it helped to shape my landscape in terms of education, if I were to say. Because there were certain things which I was questioning in the process when we were implementing some of the programs, that we all have this, you talk about your gender quota and all others. Hear me correctly, I'm not against some of those things. But the point that I'm trying to drive here is that when all those programs were implemented, I started to engage in terms of what are the theoretical underpinnings of these programs then. So I think that in itself resulted to the fact that I had to enroll for my PhD to do something that has to do with political representation from that space then. I want to start with a quote which I happened to come across when I was doing that research for my PhD. That was in 2009. And this weekend, on Sunday, I also attended a community meeting. Then I also come across some of the challenges that has to do with gender oppression, if I were to say. The quote is, if you are a married woman, you seem to have an acceptable status to represent the community. But with males, they are acceptable either married or not. Moving from that, when I was also in this community meeting on Sunday, there was a former councillor who happened to be a man, and a current councillor who happened to be a woman. And then instead of what may call a proper handover, which politicians they normally don't do, and then this one is coming to a space to say, I want to justify why and how this project came about. Instead of elaborating on that, a male started to say to a female councillor, I will say one day how you came in power. So that in itself, I think it brought to me that we've still got a long way to go when it comes to gender transformation. Fortunately, I did not take the gender approach in my work, but I took the women approach. The reason why I took the women approach was I was influenced broadly by the feminist standpoint theory in terms of how are we going to make sure that those hidden voices are known. There is no way in which you can be able to bring on forth those hidden voices unless only if, even if you do research, you have your participants to be those who are affected by the problem. So, Chair, why I was saying I'm not going to present much is because I have penned down a number of articles that colleagues can be able to look at. One of such is representation without participation, the dilemma of quotas for women in post-apartheid South Africa. The panel that was dealing with, that talks about the long history of colonialism, I think there's something that I can learn from that article. The second article that I tried also to pin down some of the things about decision making also is also an article on, let me just check my work. It's an article which looks at political decentralization, dependence and marginality of women in rural politics in South Africa. So you can get some of these ideas, part of them, which I'm going to summarize. As I was saying, Chair, that I was troubled by the fact that we do have these programs, but as we are having them, they still continue to be women underrepresentation in political structures. And that's an evidence that we have. Then I was questioning whether are numbers important or not important. Then I happened to be influenced by the work of Michael Fuku in terms of governmentality, but trying to also to look at the question of power. So I think there are three aspects that I would want to draw from the work of Nicholas Rose when it comes to this. Where he says democratic power is calculated power. That is one. Secondly, democratic power is about calculating power. Thirdly, democratic power requires citizens who calculate about power. Now, the question that you'll always come across when it comes to this issue of decision making, you'll find that a political party will be interested, or some of the members of political parties will be interested to nominate women candidates because they are also eligible in terms of the constitution. But you'll find that because patriarchy has got a potential of reproducing itself, you'll find that they will look at the word, what is found in the word. There comes a question of partisan interest versus territorial interest. You find that women, they become excluded from the onset because patriarchy is trying to protect that particular word. That's what they will justify with. Because they will say, no, if we place so and so in this particular word, we are not going to win it. But if we place a man, we are going to win that word. But there's no guarantee in actual sense at the end of the day. So the point that I'm trying to also allude to is that when I was still trying to question this, Chair, was that I also know that new politics has got a potential of creating, new policies have got a potential of creating new politics. So now I think we have gone this path of 30 years, but we need to pause because at the same time we should know that some of those policies that we have, they have already created new politics. Because policies themselves, they've got a tendency of developing, of creating what we call beneficiaries. And people, they tend to structure themselves so that they can be able to benefit from those policies. Whether those policies are disempowering women or are supporting women, it's another case. So that is why then one will need to play a much focus, more particularly when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, but we mustn't stop there at monitoring and evaluation. We must all continue to reflection and learning on the basis of what is it that we have learned in the past 30 years. Because the point that I'm saying here is that patriarchy, as it stands, it has got its potential of reproducing itself in different ways. If we're to look at it and study it using the work of Michael Fuku in terms of understanding who has got power, how have you been able to get that power in all different aspects then. With that, then I think I've also penned down one of the theories, a theory of desperation, where I try also to allude also on this aspect of participatory exclusion. Because through your PR representation system, you can be able to participate in a system, but only to find what advocate was saying here, you find that patriarchy itself becomes reproduced because the same women sometimes who are forced by the system or by the policies of their political parties in other instances to take decisions which may not benefit women. So those are kind of things, Chairperson, that you'll always find in the process then. So lastly, one of the questions when you are dealing with issues of women as a man, in most cases, there's always an argument to say, what is it that you are talking about women as a man? Then the answer to that sometimes will be, are we talking about standing for women or acting for women? Because we need to put these ideas in actual sense, a contribution in terms of how can we be able to transform our system. Because we are aware in terms of how power works, but also at the same time, I want also to caution delegates here that we all have got power, but it depends how we use that power. If we're to look back, the role that women play in 1955, if I were to say, they've demonstrated their power. I think in this house now, we can also give a round of applause to those women who formed what we call women, the Women National Coalition in 1992, of the role that they played. They used their power to influence the transition process. So maybe we wouldn't have been talking the way in which part of the things are arranged if those women did not use the power which was in their disposal. With that, Chair, I want to pause. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. You have secured an invitation to all our future events. I'm not sure if Advocate Maluleke is invited here henceforth, but you are. Thank you very much. Over to you, Speaker. Speaker is the Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, but that's the only formal thing that the Speaker does. The rest is activism and trailblazing. She is trained in governance. She's trained in so many other areas that we would like to hear about today. Speaker, over to you. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to all. I don't want to give the same disclaimer because I think that it's me who confused myself when I tried to copy what others were doing. But nonetheless, when I saw the theme, I wanted to understand the theme in my own way. I did not know what the Commission wanted to achieve. I thought that were I the Commission, what would I have wanted to achieve? But I also thought that were I part of the audience, what would I want to hear? I wanted to understand that when we're speaking of gendered influence on power, decision-making, and institutional mechanisms, can I also hear about the positive impact of the people's institutions that came with democracy on the transformation and development of our gender narrative through them exercising their own constitutional mandate and decision-making. Now, the reason that I wanted to also look at that, it's because most of the time we use the institutions that are not ours for our own agendas and our own benefit, regardless of the people that own and have borrowed us, the institutions expect of us. And I also decided to anchor that thought of mine through borrowing some words to my favorite speaker. When I say speaker, I speak of one speaker in South Africa, Dr. Frene Ginwala. Her seminal words as a foreword in the Beyond Numbers. She was the book that was speaking about women in parliament beyond numbers. I want to quote, while the debate about the enfranchisement of women and participation of women in decision-making often focuses on issues of justice, equity, and human rights, the representation of women and the inclusion of their perspectives and experience into the decision-making process will inevitably lead to solutions that are more viable and satisfy a broader range of society. We also need to look at it beyond where we are. That was more than 20 years ago. And this conference is to also celebrate 30 years of the freedom. How far have we gone? There are institutions in place. These institutions are put into existence by our constitution and they are given responsibilities. I will speak of the sector that I'm in, which is the legislative sector, which the constitution in terms of section 114 and 118 for provincial legislatures and section 5 and 59 for the National Assembly and 68 and 72 for the NCOP, outlines that our responsibility is lawmaking, oversight, and public involvement. How far are we? Yes, earlier on, the chair has spoken to the number of laws, positive and great laws that we have enacted. But are these laws impacting the lives of the people? I'd say yes, but the reality is that with the laws in place, gender-based violence and femicide has increased in South Africa. The principles of the Constitution exist. Sexism has increased in South Africa. Cultural backwardness is more pronounced. In fact, it's bolder. It's bolder than it was before. Because at least before you would be subjected to the customs and traditions of your own family. But now society expects you to even bow to customs and traditions of others. Religion is made to be an excuse, thank you, for backwardness of others. They don't even care whether you are in the same religion or not, but you are made to bow to that. Do these institutions then do their work? Of course we try. We try because in the case of KwaZulu-Natal, back from the third term, which is the term that started in 2004, they introduced sector parliaments, which were women's parliaments, workers and youth parliaments. Later on, progressively, they added the senior citizens parliament and the disability parliament. And I still remember that they have been effective because in one session of the Women's Parliament, during the time that there was an introduction of the Traditional Courts Bill, the women delegates to that Women's Parliament said, no, pause, we know the program. But there's something that you're speaking about, which is the introduction of Traditional Courts Bill. Do you understand what it says to us as rural women in this province? Already we are suffocating, but do you know the extent that we'll go to? And it was resolved that KwaZulu-Natal must not support. Of course, we did not support and lobbied other provinces. But that did not change. But what changed was the complexity of gender issues. And also, they became to be more violent, and the socio-economic conditions also worsened. Hate increased, that was also perpetuated by homophobia. Many people in KwaZulu-Natal were killed because of their sexuality. And culture was used. Yes, it was happening everywhere, but in KwaZulu-Natal it was happening and it was not really followed. There were no activists to follow it up. But also we thought of looking at coming with better solutions. which is why in the previous term we introduced a platform to have engagement with young women, because we found that they were more targets in the institutions of higher learning. When I was called by activists in one of the universities in the province, said, no, come help us. They called me auntie. Auntie, come help us. Here, you get to find residency because you've slept with someone at SRC. You think that you are now guaranteed, but you're still going to have to sleep with someone at school governance. And we started to be part of them, but we also decided to introduce something called Young Women Symposia to have to deal with issues of young women. We decided also to not do it sporadically, the issue of attending to the intersectional issues of gender, especially those that are also going hand in hand with sexuality issues. And we started to introduce the LGBTQIA+ symposia. At the center of that, there was substance abuse and human trafficking in KwaZulu-Natal, and there was a taboo topic that you can't speak about, sex work. How sex work sometimes comes to you, not you going to decide to join and become a sex worker. Now, we also had a platform where we spoke about sex work. That's where I decided, I saw that now, I'm useless. I am sitting at the helm of an institution that is not mine, and I'm useless. And I saw that I am not effecting any change through the decisions that I've been making. The impact down there is not felt. We enact laws every day, but the laws are not alive in the lived lives of the citizens every day. The Constitution says that we are non-sexist, but people are dying for their sexuality. The Constitution says that we will not be treated in any way because of who we are. But people were treated in that way. And I've been moving around saying that I'm teaching people the Constitution, which did not live with them in their lives. There is the recognition of customary law marriages. Women were coming forth and saying that when my husband passed on, I discovered that my husband is married. And that marriage is a civil marriage, it's registered. My kids feature nowhere, we got nothing. Even the house that we're in, we were at the mercy of the real wife that we've never met. Yet there was law. So the law was not alive. And I found that this is what Speaker Chinwala was speaking about. That let's not deal with one aspect, which is part of the bigger war or struggle in equality, which is the representation. Because that one aspect of representation also opens up. Firstly, the weakness is that it opens up for, I will make an example with you and me. Che, it opens up space for elite women. It doesn't go to the women that are not enlightened and that need this representation. It takes the enlightened women. Those enlightened women, once they get to the positions, they stay there and die there without creating a layer of women behind them. But also, those women go with their beliefs. If I'm homophobic and I want to call trans women hateful words, I would go and eventually try to be very religious, very cultural, because I want to protect my space. Now, I felt that we needed to have a look that is deeper. Will it be us? And I felt that, no, man, it's comfortable, this thing. You know, I'm a speaker there in that province. When I get inside, they stand. When I go to the boys' family, they say, we are taking decisions, not them go phuma phandle, abantwana mabaphume. But when I go there is power for me. Men, rich women will stand for me. So I will want to hang on to this. So I thought that we need to have these institutions to be accountable. Beyond what is said in the Constitution, thinking that Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 institutions, I felt that they were not enough. I felt that we need to ensure that to deal with tokenism and gatekeeping, because some of us end up representing men. You think that we bambide, but there is a man whispering behind you. You are a token. You think that you are in position, but you are actually ensuring that those who can think do not come in. We need to have women accountable to women beyond their political parties who are at the helm of the institutions. But it should not be to women alone. It should be to gender activists. We should understand and broaden the accountability to gender activists and the society. It should not matter that it's a man who's a gender activist, it's a trans woman, it's LGBTQI in its fullness. It's a young person. I must have a platform where I account to society. It doesn't exist. Because it must be created by me. I also ended up remembering that, no, there are countries, especially in the Arab area, where you find that some few years back, they had the highest number of women representatives in their council. But there, women's rights and children's rights do not exist. There are countries here in Africa where we have numbers that you'll never see, but there's no one with a dissenting voice to government. So because to be a woman is not inherently progressive. It's not. But sometimes we think that every woman is inherently progressive. Ubabu Eric Mjali, may his soul rest in peace, once said to me, whatever you do, remember that Margaret Thatcher was a woman. Depart from that knowledge. Wherever you go forward, depart from that knowledge. Also remember, some of the people who were leading institutions in the United Nations that did not vote for Palestine resolutions, they are led by women and black women. Because sometimes we bring it closer and say it must be a black woman, but we need activists. Now, you'd remember that in KwaZulu-Natal, in Umlazi, there was a magistrate that every GBV case was going to because was a woman, African woman. And they were walking scot-free. All of them, including repeat offenders. Until activists rose up and that woman was investigated, it was found that is paid for cases to ensure that murderers continue to go out and murder women for her to sustain her lifestyle. It happened. I'm not meaning something happened long ago. It happened after 2019. Now, I also got to understand that beyond that, the time that we achieved much, in fact, we had few women. Remember the Constitution, how many women at the time we had the Constitution that we had? But what was the caliber of those women? They were feminists and known gender activists. I don't want to mention many, but remember, Dr. Freni, Prexy Gavenda, Mayaka Manzini, one of the women that the political party disowned when she cried for help being abused by a husband who was a politician. Yes. Those are the women. So I thought that let me come here and cry for accountability. Beyond everything else, let's have accountability, because we went to a summit last year as the sector that gave us resolutions that wanted us to address some of the aspects of the Women's Charter. But I said that whilst we committed to address 3 aspects, gender mainstreaming to the use of intersectional lens in oversight, gender budgeting for all appropriations and budgets, use of existing legislation in public policy to remove gender barriers. I asked myself, how do we do this whilst public hospitals in this country that give hormonal treatment for the gender transition are so few, only 1 in KwaZulu-Natal. But also when the process of gender marking in the Department of Home Affairs still take more than 3 months. How do we also do this whilst students have to sleep with someone to afford school fees whilst they qualify for NSFAS, a funding that they should be getting? When rural women still stay in loveless marriages with sick men who have families in their workplaces, because if they leave, they will not be able to put food on the table. How do we do this, all of this, when we still allow ourselves as politicians and some of us as activists to support perpetrators of gender-based violence because we say innocent until proven guilty? So we doubt the victim. Now I say that, lastly, our culture would say that I must not speak when my own child is going through, who's a boy, through cultural process because he's a man. I'm the mother. I don't have the man to wash my feet. I am everything he has, but I can't speak. Now, how do we say that there is equality? I'm here to say that we need accountability for these institutions to use their power for the people.
Thank you very much, Speaker Boyce. Thank you, Advocate, and thank you, Prof. This ended on a very powerful note. Your contributions are really appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the theme for today has come through. It's accountability. It's about has our legislation been effective and beneficial to us? Has it changed our lives? But above all, the continued expression of the need that we need to introspect as different role players. I think Josina put it so nicely that there's the victim stroke survivor, there's the perpetrator and the bystander. And I think all the speakers, as they come out, they keep saying, where are you? What are you? Where are you standing? Are you a bystander? Are you a perpetrator? Are you a victim? And, there's that call for introspection. But wow, Speaker, you put it very well. Thank you very much. Now, I just want to ask a few questions. Advocate Maluleka, from the perspective of the Department of Women, what can you spoke about entrenched thinking patterns, as quoted by Emeritus Judge Albie Sachs. What can the department do to ensure that these entrenched thinking patterns are actually shaken and done away with, and we turn that corner? Because to such a large extent, thinking patterns tend to inform our discourse, particularly the discourse of gender equality. People come in with entrenched belief systems, you name it, and thinking patterns. We know you people are emotional. I know I'm trivializing it, but bottom line is the entrenched thinking patterns. What can we do? The speaker has suggested dialogues with the different sectors of society, women, workers, the aged, and the youth and workers. So maybe those are some of the things that we can do. And you also said we need to ask ourselves, have we failed to empower women? I would like you to start there and answer a bit if we have failed. You posed the question. So I just want you to answer that. And then with regards to you, Prof, you've said a mouthful. In the sense that once you talk about calculated power, calculating power, and people who use that to calculate how to stay in power, it has become a culture beyond politics. It has become how people survive. Each and every sector of our society have got people who from day one are coming in and misusing and abusing their power. Because they're already looking at where to from here. For me, never mind the fact that I came here promising other people, I'm going there for you. So that is so profound. And I also just want you to unpack it for us in terms of how we can break that cycle of calculating power and using calculated power to be kept in power, to calculate to be kept in power. I really like that. Speaker, I don't know where to start. You have posed issues and you even answered yourself. But the biggest thing which I want to throw to the audience today is that we need to ask ourselves about the positive impact on institutions that we are in. Not only government institutions, CSOs, everything, you name it. Sometimes when we say we need money, which is correct, we need money to fund certain things, let's ask ourselves, is that money going to be used optimally for what we want it to be used for? Or is it going to be yet another opportunity for us to pat ourselves on the back and say, we've got a structure that we have set up? You must remember our constitution for the longest was called the Rolls Royce of the Constitution. It's only the third constitution in the world that mentions water, sexual orientation, and so many other things. So how can we use our money and build our institutions without us again building another white elephant that will not go down to the people? Okay, and then Speaker, I want you to also address the second thing, which is about tokenism and gatekeeping. How can we make sure that that is done away with? Because tokenism and gatekeeping for me are some of the things that come very cheap. You get huge rewards for tokenism, you get huge rewards for gatekeeping, but it has been turned around. Gatekeeping now wears the clothes of an activist sometimes. Gatekeeping wears the clothes of a caring person sometimes, a trailblazer, whatever it is. Gatekeeping has changed its format in so many ways. So if you can just address those. Over to you.
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge that we have is changing the mindset I always say, normally when we talk about changing the mindset, people think we need to change the mindset of men. It's not just men, you change the mindset of men, but also change the mindset of females in order for them to be able to understand that he doesn't love me when he beats me, because sometimes it's the language in the communities where somebody thinks, he's so jealous of me, he loves me. But also, I always say, how do you raise a child who, when their girlfriend says, I no longer want you, he'll be able to say, you're lost. Actually, you'll never do better than me. But at the same time, I say, as government, we introduced legislation that disempowered parents. When we introduced legislation like, and I'm not saying we should bring corporal punishment, but I'm saying when those laws were introduced, we didn't go back to communities to say, you are not allowed to, hit them with a shambok or whatever, but this is how you can empower them. This is how you can, and I would like to make an example. When my grandson was still in grade R, he came back one day and said, so and so beat me. And automatically I just said, why didn't you hit him back? And he said, yeah, I would face the wall. If you fight, you face the wall. So he was afraid to hit back because he would face the wall. But in our schools and in the houses, they have not been told in terms of how, or they've not been empowered how to deal with the children. But also, I think, is the former CGE commissioner who spoke about the family structure having changed. As government, but also as society, we have failed to accommodate and build the family structure that is existing. So as a department, I don't know if Esther has touched on that when she presented. One of the programs within the Treating Gender-Based Violence as a Pandemic is a training on effective parenting for communities. It's a mammoth task. We don't have the money even to do that, but it's a program where we are knocking doors now everywhere, including private sector, where we are saying in order for us to address the issue of gender-based violence and the issues that are plaguing our country, it's because we have failed to capacitate. And I mean, even as a manager, you always attend training courses in order for you to be able to manage. But there's no training course that assists families. Now that the family structure has been broken, previously there would be in an extended family in the rural areas or here in Gauteng. Now it's a single parent alone, where she ends up giving up and saying, I don't know what to do. But the other thing, we have failed to educate the community to understand how the municipality works. The municipalities, the councillors and whatever, they will just put a notice there that we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and the communities will go past, and the councillor would make it, would put it into effect. And yet, if the communities had understood, they would say no. The communities would demand that the councillors do certain things. So for me, yeah, I think for now, let me touch on that. But also, one aspect that I've forgotten, young persons, when they grow up, there will be young persons who will be saying to the boy, it's mostly in boys, it doesn't happen that much in girls, maybe it happens, with Shimane, with Shimane, I want a girlfriend. So this person grow up being afraid of being called Shimane, to a certain extent that if the girlfriend says, I no longer want to, then he thinks, yo, bazoting is Shimane. So you'd rather kill him. How do we also empower young girls to know that I do not need a man in order for me to be able to thrive out there and be something, all those things. But I think the other biggest thing is that we have failed to monitor as government now, whether it be government or Chapter 9 institutions or the legislature, to protect young persons that are at school. We signed an MOU with TUT where we're asking them to do certain things for us. One is to establish a center of excellence for persons with disabilities. The second one is on gender-based violence. The professor told us what's happening at the university. I was shocked, even at night when I came back, I was still shocked in terms of what's happening at the universities. And the thing that I asked myself was, I'm in government, But besides being in government, I'm a gender activist. How could we allow this? So what we have decided is that we want to bring all universities, we want to host, I think we'll partner with them, we want to host a seminar for violence at the tertiary institutions.
Thank you, Chair. I think time has come to ask ourselves some of the uncomfortable questions, somehow. Why do I say this? And also on that aspect, Chair, that we're talking about, more particularly the issue around citizens who have calculated about power. Part of this knowledge, we must know and remember that somewhere around the 19th century, the issue of statistics was more important. That is why even when you look in terms of research, we started to move from this positivist thinking to where we are now. So the point there is, when we're relying too much on statistics, we're leaving out a number of things. And then the issue of gender in actual sense, there are instances where you can quantify it, but there are also other instances where you cannot quantify it. Then, as I'm saying that then, we need to, for those who are maybe following some work around transformative innovation policy, we started to say, in as much as we need policies, but we need also to engage them to try to understand how transformative they are, those policies. Because by the time we understand how transformative they are, that is the only way in which you can be able to break this, what you call internalized oppression that you are living under in most cases. Because some of these decisions, you are taking them under what we call internalized oppression. But now, that means to say, for those who are also following the work of women movement in South Africa, that is why I was saying, let us celebrate the work of those women. But the challenging part to that was that they started to, I'm not sure how can I put it so that it can sound well, but for me, I still feel that we need those activism, because it started to stop when the regime was not really dismantled. So we need some niche actors so that we can be able to dismantle the regime. Because once, I think the former deputy presidents talk about that we have not yet been able to acquire what we call the gender regime. And those women movement, for me, they were acting as niche actors, because, as you are talking, Speaker, that the issue about accountability, but then also again, who is going to be at the forefront of demanding that accountability if we don't have niche actors? We need those niche actors. So I think that's the way, Chairperson, I will say, in as much as we are advocating for transformative change, or we are advocating for transformation, how transformative it is. We need those policies.
Thank you. I am not sure that I have a straight answer, but I heard Commissioner Kumete speaking about something that I termed in my mind like a reset. I think we need also to, as activists, to press a reset. Am I an activist because I would have been an activist anyways? Am I persuaded by the cause or by the conditions? Amongst here, I'm seeing many faces that I know that they left lucrative careers, took monies that they should have kept for their retirement and better lives for their own children. started up the work of activism. Others opened up their own homes, paid rates, utilities out of their own pockets. Because then, to be an activist did not have money. Meant that you will be poor every day. I know that most activists are also in debt. Beyond that, they had invested so much money. But are we all like that? Those who become public representatives like me, am I there because I felt that being a primary school teacher was never gonna put me in the level of life that I may have desired. So we need also to have some research. What puts you here? A frank discussion amongst ourselves, and then we decide, who are you with? Now, it will be very difficult to do that because money is very loud. Money is very bold, but money is powerful. As long as you understand the currency and the value, it will open many doors. But what Prof spoke about, the women that started this, they had nothing. Absolutely nothing. When they started in 1992, the National Coalition, they had before took women from this country to the Maibuya conference. Women went to the Maibuya conference, bengenayo imali yokubuya. Not even having passports, but they were risking being arrested on return. Now, can we do that? However few that may do that. I think that we must, those of us who have been given, trusted by the women and other activists with the power, we must breed an environment that allows them to be. Regardless of connection or knowing them in political affiliation and race. But the work must speak. When we do that, we must also educate each other to reclaim our institutions. When you see a parliamentarian, do you see a parliamentarian or do you see a member of a political party that is in parliament or in a legislature? Because once that person takes an oath or affirmation of office, what's for you? Okay, you are from my town, you are from Port Shepstone. Where is your constituency office? That's what I do. I don't care which party you are. I tell them that you are from, oh, okay, are you from Ndwedwe? There is an issue in Ndwedwe. I know that you are in the National Assembly. Kindly help me. Before I became a speaker, they will tell me that my constituency is not there, it's in Limpopo. Okay, fine. Whilst you find me someone who has a constituency office in Ndwedwe, may you help me because you reside there. Because you are accountable to me first.
Speaker, can I stop you there because I'm going to give you a round to wrap up. I just want to have 3 questions, one each for each of the... Come, Vanderbilt, have you got your hand up? No, Chair. Oh, okay. I thought, yes. Oh, okay. Come, Naidu. Any other hand to this side? Commissioner Bata. And then the other side. This side. Come, you're asking. Speaker voice. Oh, speaker voice. And then, come, Bata, you're asking. Oh, yes, yes. You're asking who, sir?
Asking the speaker.
The speaker. Come, Bata. The speaker is taken. Yes, we have not started. I just wanted.
I want to say
Hayi bo, combat. Ah? Mcembe uphethe yimi. Akakakunikeza ithuba. Lokuthukulu. Yeah, hold it. This side who's coming? Akudlali power now. I've learned from the best. The power that you calculating. Dibonek dal. This side, who are we having? No one. Okay, so we've got 3 questions. Common Naidu, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Speaker, my questions are directed to you. You spoke a lot has been said, but things that stood out for me is a victim and referring to a perpetrator as an alleged accused. I think you also spoke about bail, but even if you didn't, I'm going to bring in bail into it. Civil society organizations have brought on the no bail for perpetrators of sexual violence. Now, these rights are entrenched in our Constitution. It's a constitutional right granted to an accused person. When you speak of alleged rapist and what it does to a victim, and the length of time that we refer to that individual as an alleged perpetrator, what are we saying? Is it time to call for a constitutional amendment? The right to bail is enshrined in our Constitution.
Okay.
Our president has said no bail. So that's my question to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Combatter.
I'm going to just ask the Honorable Speaker that,
Our Honorable Speaker.
you know, as such an activist in that position of power, she's, for me, a paradigm pioneer to try and transform that institution, this legislature, and try and rock the boat and bring a paradigm shift as a paradigm pioneer.
Yes.
Because they still very challenged with traditional and cultural practices, let alone toxic patriarchy and masculinity because of the culture and the social constructs that are deep-rooted in that province. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for your contribution. That was just a comment, and I think it applies to all our provinces. I mean, Combatter, you come from a province that is so violent towards the elderly. Young men, after they've been to, run around, Bateba Susi Futa, and they rape old people. Yeah, so, hey, we are all in trouble. Say, Eastern Cape. Yeah, say, over to you.
It's Bonello, not sir.
Bonello, thank you.
Thank you. And my question is to the speaker, and I am speaking because you mentioned this. Sorry, I'm Bonello from Out LGBT Wellbeing. You mentioned this when you talk about dialogue that was held by the legislature, which I congratulate KZN. I congratulate also the other provinces which have done this. But what programs have come out from that dialogue? Because I know it has happened now, I think it's the second year. And what programs have come out, or resolutions that came out from that dialogue that are now going to be implemented in your province, but also in the other provinces? Because I also feel like, as activists, because I also heard you that there are no activists to follow up or support, which I think is also untrue. But in it being untrue, I think also activists are tired and under-resourced and overstretched of us coming to spaces like this and speaking the same thing for the past 15 years and always been told that we don't have enough time and everything is wrapped up, and then we'll come back to celebrate 40 years to still say this very same thing. And I think if you Google me 10 years ago, I would have asked you the very same question, but just no answers. But so my question is very direct. What programs come out of this, and where do they sit? Because we only see these things being implemented towards February when you are about to close your budget.
Okay, I will start with Usbonelo. I am not sure of the dialogues, which ones, but I will speak firstly with the LGBTQIA+. We have had lot of programs, especially in the security in schools. But the change is very difficult, I must say. Some schools have changed, others have not changed. But also government institutions have changed because there was they were not requiring major things. They required affirming small programs, but fundamentally the Department of Health on issues of gender affirming health, access to gender affirming health. The MEC had been having sessions, and I know for a fact that the services that were only given in Edendale are now going to be extended according to the plans. But already there are other mobile services that are given that are speaking to gender affirmation. I also know that there was the issue of safe houses in the LGBTQI+ symposia. I have received a list from, we're starting to celebrate small things. 30 years, I cried when Honorable MEC of Public Works and Infrastructure was MEC Mayor of the DA. I literally cried because I remembered the day that we had the first symposium that the only members I had was myself, the then Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Mayor, and the chairperson of the Public Participation Portfolio because he was chairing the session. No member from the executive. We are an 80-member legislature, but we were literally 4. And because he's an openly gay man who's also an activist, when he was appointed, I just went to him and said, remember my safe houses. Now, he had already given me the list of where the prospective buildings to give safe houses for the choir persons will be in KwaZulu-Natal. We have to now finalize the issue of meeting and going to the relevant departments. These are the gains. On the issue of young women, in the issues that we are having with the young women, we have held the Department of Justice as well as SAPS to actually hand them some of the outstanding cases that were not attended, and those cases, some of them have been taken to court in terms of gender-based violence after the symposia. On sex work, we are still where we were. We don't want to speak whether we're moving towards decriminalization or not. But importantly, we're no longer getting insulted in the streets. They no longer insult me on radio. They no longer insult Asijigi, but now we're getting to go to platforms and they are listened to, those who speak either for or against, and there's open engagement. But also there's now an annual platform by the religious leaders in KwaZulu-Natal, where we also deal with issues of sexuality. It's hosted by Umapule, where every other religious leader around June is called by Stoneface. It's usually held in the Bed Center. Every other leader that gets behind the pulpit and speech does hate speech gets to be called in and they say that there's a rehabilitation process, and I become part of that, but others still refuse to come. About what I said, that no following up, and you saying that activists are tired, they do follow up. I did not necessarily mean that you're not following up, but I was saying that there are institutions that are not followed up. Parliaments and legislatures are not followed up in this country. Parliamentarians, I think, Spanelo, I clarified that the institutions that are empowered to do lawmaking, oversight, and public participation, Tina, we all want to speak to those who execute, probably because they have money. We don't have money, but the power we wield is dangerous. And if this power continue to be unchecked, we will continue to enact laws that will not be implementable in reality, because our parties want us to implement. There is Political Party Funding Act. We don't know what political parties do with those monies that go to them. But it's your tax money. You know, I always say that in KwaZulu-Natal, it's 225 million per annum. And the legislature's budget is just short of 126 million to do the work. But we are also having a 200 and something million. We must be accountable. Legislatures and parliament must be made to be accountable. We go through public hearings. We call public hearing in a town area where people go to work. We call it at 9 a.m. We're going to enact a law. Everybody there is at work, and we call public hearing at 9 a.m. Then we go and say that the 17 people that were there have agreed to it. Even with what you are speaking about, the maintenance law that is coming, we're going to call it at that time. And we will go, unless people take us to court eventually, but sometimes they also do not win. They don't always win. Then, thank you for what you said, but Commissioner Mbata, but it's not easy. I am known there that, it's fine. But one thing that I loved, one leader, may his soul rest in peace, in 2019 when I was first elected as speaker, because I had been a chief whip, then it says to me, uyabona ke manje Mahubela, kumele sikutholele indoda ikushade. Ngoba awukwazi ukuthatha isihlalo sethu esibaleke kanjena ungenandoda. So literally he was saying that, you know, now that you are a speaker, we must find a man to marry you, because you can't have such a position of ours that is so important, yet you don't have a man. And I said, why? And he said, we don't want you to be cheeky. Sifuna ukuqeda ingane. Unengane kuzafanele iphele manje. Futhi sifuna ukunika isithunzi. So he said that they must deal with my cheekiness and also give me dignity. You can't continue going with the LGBTQIA londizanayo in a wrong word. You can't continue to gather the sex workers because, hey, Leandro, and I said to him, oh, okay, no, you can help me, but make sure that that man has money, because he will have to build safe houses, but also to employ those who want to leave sex work because they were forced to it. So I have learned also to cope. I developed coping mechanism along the way, but it's not easy. But I will say this. In our first sex work symposia, we discovered that the delegates were not, we were counting the delegates, and we find that, hey man, we're not the number that we're supposed to be. And the delegate that is missing is on the side that is calling for decriminalization. So it must be either from one of the other NGOs started to say, look through. And we found that it was from Sisonke. That is not there. We go to the hotel, and we find that the person is in a bad state in the hotel. And now what am I gonna say? I lost my mind. When I tried to report to those, they said, "Ini." Well, then I just cut off the phone, and then I said, "Look, I need doctors here. But also, I need me. And I have me. And I have Sisonke here. And we assisted the person." But what happened is that that person, when she was recovering, we found that the family hasn't known her whereabouts for 17 years. So the positive that happened out of that. Had we been scared and said that we're not going to look, or we're not going to be seen taking care of her in the manner that she was in, she might have died, and no family might have known. We found that she had a 17-year-old daughter that she left when she was 3 months old. Now, these are some of the joys of the work. The last one is, I know that she knows my answer. She just wants to put me on the spot. No. The Constitution is good. It's good. No, but our challenges have changed. Our challenges have changed. We're making every other law there, but why are we not changing the laws that affect the very principles that we pronounced at the beginning of the Constitution? The ideals, the founding values and principles of the Constitution. Why are we so lenient to those who bathatha Constitution kanje bayidabule? Because those who deal with issues of gender-based violence, they don't only attack the victim, but they attack the very same Constitution. When will we protect the Constitution from itself? But amongst the Constitution, there are very many contradictory clauses that contradict the very standing of the Constitution. It's fine. We were dealing with the property clause that we failed. But why are we not dealing with protecting also the founding principles of the Constitution? It's because Onontembeko are not accountable to anybody.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, can I suggest that those would be your closing remarks, ne? Yeah, we've run seriously out of time. I think we were supposed to, it's 42 now, we're supposed to finish at 30. Prof, can you have 1 minute of closing time? Advocate Malubeka, 1 minute of closing time. Closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think for me, what is critically important is that how do we move that subjudicated knowledge to the mainstream knowledge? I think that is where institutions need to collaborate. And thank you for inviting me here, because that's part of collaboration. Because some of this, this evidence-based we're talking about earlier, may only come provided different institutions, they come together to be able to produce knowledge that can take us forward. That part is very important. The also other part to that, Chair, is also about the language that I had here, that if you don't have gender equality action plan, you cannot be able to get budget, because government will only fund plans that has put together integrated gender action plans that can be able to address issues at a grassroots level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, is the empowerment of the communities. Yes, we do have civil society organizations which are at the grassroots level addressing gender-based violence, but the communities are not empowered. So both government and civil society, we need to empower the communities, grassroots level people, so that they can be able to claim their rights, but also understand the opportunities that exist. I'll make an example. We have a Department of Small Business Development, their approach most of the time is like that of DTIC, wanting to produce millionaires. But I think they should be facilitating your sustainable development approach, where your informal businesses are legalized and be able to procure from municipalities, from government and all those. So our approach has always been looking at millionaires and billionaires, and we're celebrating them, but we've never looked at the grassroots level, and that's the approach we should take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This has been a thought-provoking session. In fact, when Commissioner Kumete and CEO Matotoka were like, yes, Chair, you'll do that one, I was like, eish, Matot. I'm under pressure here, but no, this has been beautiful. You know, we take away the issue of laws not alive in the lived lives of South African people. I think that was a powerful way of putting it. We also are taking away with us the need to build into accountability into everything that we do. Gone are the days of talking. Now we need to hold each sector, each individual, each duty bearer, each participator accountable. But what I also liked about this session was that there was a lot of introspection that happened in a roundabout way. Prof said time has come to ask ourselves uncomfortable questions, and we tend not to do that. We sit in rooms and just label ourselves all sorts of other things and make ourselves feel good and walk away and think, you know what, I've done it, I'm arrived. But the most powerful of them all is when the speaker said, what puts you here? That's a lovely way of ending it. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you need a chairperson for every, MC for anything, call me. Thank you.
Can we give them another round of applause? This was beautiful. So we have come to the end of our day today. And just a few announcements. Tomorrow we are starting at 8:30. We'll have a short day. It will end around 1:30. And also tomorrow we need you here again. Please come join us again tomorrow. We need you because tomorrow we'll be consolidating the resolutions that will culminate into a conference declaration that will then implement after this conference. So we need everyone here. We need your ideas, we need your thoughts, we need your reflections as well. And we also have a lost and found desk just outside. If you have lost anything, there's someone who lost a card, a ring, and a jacket. Can you please go to the lost and found desk just out here? And then please don't forget to collect your parking ticket at the reception area just on the foyer. Oh, okay, yes. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for your wonderful participation and presence. If you did not come here, this day would have been a failure. So thank you. Travel safe. God bless. See you tomorrow.